Всем привет, друзья! Сегодня 20 июня 2017 год, и в нашем городе Ванкувер, Вашингтон, очень хорошее событие. Это 80 лет, как сюда прилетел наш легендарный летчик Валерий Чкалов. И по этому поводу мы решили с нашим клубом собраться и провести такой, скажем так, в честь его прилета небольшой пробег. Ребята уже едут, они едут из города Сиэтл в этот район. Вот, и мы будем сегодня встречаться. Я также иду заводить свой автомобиль. Вот мы приехали на первую нашу стоянку, там где будем встречаться с остальными ребятами, которые едут сейчас из города Сиэтл.
Вот что, приехали, приезжаем, все паркуется восьмерка. Восьмерка, Нива. Привет, дорогие!
Yes.
Вот так вот.
Yes.
Не все так,
Вот
не,
так
по,
вот,
не
да.
по-детски здесь.
Мы не шутим.
Ну, привет, официально.
Осторожно.
Официально.
Держи камеру двумя руками.
Вот.
Крепче.
Официально поздоровался с нашими друзьями. Проехали из Сиэтла. Портланд, вот еще один.
Давно тебя не видел.
Ты с пивосиком можно было.
Нет.
Так.
Космос летит.
Только на фото.
Еще, Ром, еще можно. Я тебе покажу.
It's very poppy and like true classic.
Советский чемоданчик.
Максим, ты должен ему дать.
А мы вроде не закрываем. О, Чкалов летит, да. Чкалов летит, Чкалов летит.
Alright. Олег, давай. Так как ты в форме, цветки. А я буду делать пока это. Valery Chkalov, that was exactly 80 years. Right to the minute, since this guy landmark flight over the North Pole. So here we go, and this is our honor. Anniversary. They put it here.
I know.
Objects, actually mostly paperwork. A lot of it, actually, amazingly, telegrams from United States dignitaries back to Moscow, specifically to Stalin, congratulating him on the flight actually occurring. So we have those reproduced, and they're up on the wall, many of them. But Pearson Air Museum is here again to tell the history of Pearson Field, and we do this really with panels and murals. And it's actually put together as a chronological museum. You just walk around and learn about the history. So the first flight that we celebrate is in 1905, which was actually a dirigible. So it was actually a hydrogen-filled dirigible. 1905 was the centennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition. And there was a big event in Portland, the Lewis and Clark Exposition. And as part of that, that balloon was flying around Portland. And you have to think in 1905, most people had not seen a human being in a powered flying vehicle before. So this was quite notable. And on a dare, a pilot actually flew his balloon from northwest Portland to the Vancouver Barracks parade ground. And that was actually the first powered flight over the Columbia River. And he actually hovered over the parade ground and tried to return to Portland, but the winds were coming out of the southwest, and so he ended about 15 miles to the northeast of us, and actually had to take the balloon apart and ship it back. But in 1911, 1912, the U.S. Army actually started hosting what they called aviation camps here at Vancouver Barracks. They allowed local aviators to bring their own home-built aircraft to fly from the polo grounds here. Polo, of course, played with ponies and a mallet, and it's an interesting transitionary time of the U.S. Army, where the Army's going from a horse army in the 19th century to a mechanized army. And so you actually have on the field airplanes mixing with horses, which is very entertaining. And for 3 glorious summers, you actually have
Playing with horses.
these early aircraft actually flying around Pearson Field, or what would become Pearson Field. This is actually a model of a Curtiss Pusher, and this is the first mass-produced airplane in history. We're actually building a full-scale replica of one in another facility. It'll be here this fall. About 1,500 of these were built between 1911 and 1914. It was designed by Glenn Curtiss. As you can see, there's no cockpit. You just sat out in the open. It was called a pusher because the engine faced backwards and it pushed through the air. But it basically had all the components of a modern aircraft: ailerons, rudder, elevator. It basically flew in the same way, just a lot slower. This aircraft here is kind of our signature exhibit. This is actually one of only 12 DH-4 Liberties left in the world. This was the only American-built airplane to fly into combat with American crews in the First World War. It actually was a British design, designed by Jeffrey de Havilland. It was a bomber. And when the United States joined the First World War in April of 1917, can you guess how many airplanes the United States military had in April of 1917?
No clue.
We had 55. Okay, in 1917, Russia had over 5,000.
Yeah, that's
Germany
nothing.
had over 15,000. France had 18,000. Great Britain had another 17 or 18,000. We had 55.
Wow, that's nothing.
5 of them were Wright flyers, so literally the first airplane. Every airplane we had was automatically declared obsolete, and we said we need to catch up. The Allies told us do not try and design your own airplanes. It'll take you forever. We'll send you prototypes. You decide what you can build. So a DH-4 was sent over. We decided that this aircraft was capable of being constructed by American firms. But we decided we needed our own engine put in it. We did. The British were flying them with Rolls-Royce engines, which were 250 horsepower. And of course, because we're Americans, we actually have to have more horsepower, right? So we spec'd out a 400 horsepower V12. So this is actually called a Liberty, but it's named after the engine. This is called the Liberty V12. And it was actually designed by engineers from Packard, Cadillac, Ford, and GM. The United States government grabbed those engineers, locked them into an unair-conditioned conference room in downtown Washington, D.C. That's right. And said, you're not coming out until you give us a working design.
Soviets did the same thing in America. It's the same exactly.
What is amazing is they designed this engine in a week. The first production model was built by Packard within 30 days. And within 60 days, they actually accomplished a 50-hour continuous run test. The British and French said it was impossible. You can't in 60 days build and test an engine for 50 hours.
60 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, actually,
Couple
for
months.
1917,
That's
this is
it.
an amazing engine. It's aluminum block, V12, has double overhead cams. It weighed just under 1,000 pounds and produced 400 horsepower. And actually, it was the most horsepower of any engine in the First World War.
Wow.
And it really became the basis of almost every military aviation V12 going into the Second World War. And 20,000 of these were made in 1918 and 1919. In 1931, there were still over 10,000 that were still in crates, and we sold them to the Russian government. And you guys put them in tanks. So almost all of them were destroyed in the opening weeks of the Second World War. But this is a rare survivor of one of the Liberty V12 engines. So this airplane is made out of wood. Specifically, it's made out of spruce, and that ties in with the story down here. This is a diorama of a large lumber mill that was actually on this site in 1918. And this is probably one of the least told stories of the First World War. The U.S. Army took over the lumber industry, specifically to cut spruce to build airplanes. The Allies said they needed 190 million board feet of lumber of 1918 alone in order to defeat the Germans. And that was enough, I've done the figures, to actually create 60,000 airplanes, which is an enormous figure for that era. So, spruce was the most desirable wood to build airplanes in this era. It had the correct combination of lightweight, high strength, great flexibility, and usually not a lot of knots in the wood. So spruce was actually avoided by loggers out here because it was so flexible. If you frame a house, like a 2-story house out of spruce, and the wind blows and you're standing on the 2nd story, you'll get seasick. It moves, which is great for an airplane because the wings can actually have that flexibility, right? But in a house, it's terrible. So loggers avoided spruce. But suddenly in 1917, the U.S. Army said, we want spruce, and we need lots of it. So what was amazing is right when they put that call out, there was actually a labor union here in the Pacific Northwest called the Industrial Workers of the World that saw an opportunity, and they went on strike. So they crippled the lumber industry. No lumber was coming out of the woods. The United States government was saying they wanted 30 million board feet a month, and in June of 1917, 10,000 board feet of lumber came out in the entire month, you know? So the Army put an investigator out here, tried to coordinate with the Industrial Workers of the World and with the lumber barons. For 3 months he did negotiations. He came back to Washington, D.C., said it's hopeless, they'll never get their act together to win the war. So the Army just said, we're taking over. What they did was they created their own rival labor union. They called it the Loyal Legion of Loggers and Lumbermen. You had to swear an oath of allegiance to the United States and that you would not actually go on strike. and they met all of the demands of the IWW. 8-hour workday, better living conditions. If you got hurt, they agreed to put an army surgeon in the field to take care of you. Better food, they put army kitchens in place out in the woods. So they created the Spruce Production Division. So 30,000 soldiers, rather than going to France to fight, became loggers and lumbermen. And to really increase production, the US Army built 3 big lumber mills. And the biggest was here. So this little symbol says, "You are here." So this is where Pearson Air Museum sits on this complex. The road you drove in on, 5th Street, is just on the edge here. So a rail spur was built in. And what is amazing is this was an open field in 1917. And in 45 days, the US Army built the world's largest lumber mill.
45 days.
So this was the main cut-up plant.
That's a lot of
So the logs would come in out
of
of
slaves.
on the railroads. They would come in here, come out on the other side as cut lumber.
Soldiers.
And then the railroads would load it up and ship it back east, and then it would go into aircraft production. 60% of it was actually destined for Great Britain and France for them to build aircraft as well. And a lot of it was in transit across the Atlantic when the war ended. So what is amazing is in June of 1918, the US Army hit their peak of production here. They were cutting 1.5 million board feet of lumber at this one facility every day. So what is amazing, Germany in October of 1918, 1 month before the war ended, the entire German aircraft industry received about 100,000 board feet of lumber in 1 month. We were cutting 1 million a day. And this was front page news. This was news to Germany. It's coming your way. You can't stop it. And we were sending the steel and the brass and everything else, and 8 million soldiers as well. So it became a war of attrition, and that's why Germany capitulated, because they knew there was no way. It was coming. There was no way they could offset this level of production. What is amazing is when the war ended on November 11th of 1918, there was 45 million board feet of lumber stacked up on the field to the south of us, and all of the aircraft contracts were canceled instantly. Nobody wanted spruce. The only market were piano makers and violin makers.
There you go.
The Army had the corner on the market for like a decade, but very quickly those producers said, we don't want any more, so most of it was sold as firewood.
Wow.
And then the Army got out of the lumber industry just as quickly as they got into it. Basically by 1924, this is all gone. And Pearson Field replaced it in 1921. So a pair of hangars were actually built in this location in order to actually start Army aviation with what they called the 321st Observation Squadron. So the DH-4 Liberty there, we actually have it painted to specifically resemble one of the aircraft that the Army used here in the 1920s. And I like to think that she's kind of tough full because there's a high likelihood that a lot of the spruce in the airplane would probably cut that. Ironically. So that's a very quick overview of the beginnings of Pearson Field. Unfortunately, I have a meeting starting at 9:30, but I basically encourage you to roam about the museum. As you go across on the other side, you'll see more panels on the development of the 321st Observation Squadron. The aircraft hanging up here is called a Voisin. That was the first purpose-built bomber in the world. It was a French design, but 500 of them were sold to Russia in 1914, and they used them against the Germans on the Eastern Front. And of course, there's a new exhibit up on the balcony called A Red Bolt from the Blue, talking about the Chkalov flight. So,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you for visiting.
В прошлом году в этом музее построили в честь Чкалова вот этот левел. Здесь немножко истории про этот самолет. Ан-25, да? Ну, 37-й год это, когда приземлился Чкалов. По-моему, вон народу здесь было, да? Интересно, как им сообщили, что Чкалов сюда летит?
Радиограмму высылали.
Радиограммы, да? Вот сам Чкалов, наш герой. А это что, его очки что ли вот это лежат? Да ладно. Точно.
Купи-продам.
Сколько оно бабок стоит сейчас вот это? Только одни очки, а?
Я думаю, наверное,
На этих очках можно...
штук 500, наверное, дадут.
Каких штук 500? Я думал, пару лимончиков, если не больше. Конечно. Их больше нет ни одного.
Прикинь, коробочка даже от очков.
Да.
И по-английски написано.
А подумай,
Ну,
Google, видишь?
this one is extra expensive.
Лукур, что такое?
This one's extra expensive
уже
because
цветной был.
this one's extra expensive. Это тоже
Нет, этот журнал, они рассказывают, у них же пробный был полет, первый. Когда они летали.
Где они сняли?
Они выпить предложили.
Да, вон, видишь, тут написано, even before transpolar flight, видишь?
15 центов.
Вон, смотри, ничего себе дорого.
Это дорого. Это сейчас как 15 баксов.
15 баксов это дорого.
Нет, для журнальчика 15 баксов. Мне кажется, не дешево.
Да, это считай, что ты купил газету.
Да, интересно было. Вот, кстати, в Портленде они в даунтауне.
Вот там Бродвей.
Вот Бродвей, да.
Нет, смотри, рядом. Справа.
Ну да.
Это что?
Вот это все чкаловские. Марик, не стучи, пожалуйста. Вот эта книга, которую сам Чкалов заполнял, вел какие-то наблюдения, когда летел. Вот этот вот датчик современный, сегодняшний GPS.
Это тоже Чкалов.
Вот еще один бакс такой его вещей, книги его звезда. Ну вот, закончился у нас сегодня неофициальный съезд в честь Валерия Чкалова, в честь его грандиозного перелета через Северный полюс Соединенных Штатов Америки. Сегодня исполнилось этому перелету 80 лет. Это очень даже такая круглая дата. И я благодарю всех друзей, которые сегодня были с нами. Даже в честь этого мы сделали вот такие вот маечки. Спасибо, друзья, что вы смотрите наш канал. Пожалуйста, поддержите нас, подписывайтесь на наш канал. Надеемся, в этом году мы будем еще много удивлять вас разными видео. Есть очень интересные машинки, которые появились в Портленде, также и в штате Вашингтон, в Сиэтле. Вот. Следующее наше шоу будет, или выставка, это будет состоится 24 июня в Гринвуде, штат Вашингтон, Сиэтл. Это будет очередная классическая выставка классических автомобилей, и в том числе будет также будут советские автомобили. Я в прошлом году снимал видео, я скоро его выложу на свой канал. Ставьте лайки, подписывайтесь и всего хорошего. Удачи вам на дороге.